everyone has enjoyed the summit so far. The last part of our afternoon's agenda will be covering the infrastructure bill that all of us are well aware of and been following the last several months, $65 billion in new broadband funding. So we will have three different panels. First panel today will be our federal panel, which will include our federal administrators seen right to my left. They'll be covering their different programs, providing an overview and answering several of our questions. Second panel will be led by former FCC Commissioner Mignon Clyburn, who is leading a panel, state and local government leaders, focusing on how the money will be appropriated down to the state and local level, how communities will be using the money. And then our third and final panel will be Andrew Lippman is a partner at Morgan Lewis, leading a group of competitive builders and providing their own views on how they tend to use the money and be part of the process. So we look forward to our conversation with each of the panelists. I'd like to introduce first our federal panel, the role of federal agencies. And again, I really appreciate the three gentlemen being here today, taking time out of their busy schedules. Joey, we talked last week, you spoke about being popular. This is a popularity contest and how it's kind of changed for you and where you work.
Doug has more money than I do, so he's the most popular on the panel.
Yeah, so we didn't rank them by how much money they have, but could have done that. It would have been an interesting panel as well. But again, I'd like to introduce them each. And we have to my left immediately, Doug Kinkoph, who's the Associate Administrator in the Office of Internet Connectivity and Growth at NTIA. Then to his left is Christopher McLean, who's Assistant Administrator of Electrical Programs at USDA, but also is part of the Rural Utilities Service and acting administrator for a lot of the infrastructure and broadband programs such as Reconnect. And then to his left is the one and only Joey Wender, who's a former staffer of Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, and he's taken on a new big role at U.S. Treasury. He is the Capital Projects Fund Director. So I look forward to speaking to each of you and learning more about your programs. I'll kind of open it up and I'll go Doug first and then to Chris, if you'd like to introduce yourselves and just provide an overview of each of your programs, just touching on the main points you'd like.
Sure. Doug Kinkoph, Associate Administrator at NTIA. You guys hearing me? So we have, $48 billion of the $65 billion that was put into the ISA bill. $42.45 billion of that is for infrastructure in the BEAD program. With that is a formula-based grant program based on the FCC maps. We have the digital equity program, $2.75 billion. That is split between a state program of about $2 billion and about, just right around under $2 billion and about $1.4 billion for the competitive digital equity program. So much needed, right? The intent of the administration is not just to physically connect people, but to get them online, making them productive, meaningful use of the internet, creating jobs, home-based businesses, et cetera. Then we have $1 billion that goes to our middle mile program. Obviously, that'll be directed to, as we build these out, to helping to reduce the cost of building out to rural areas and get those last miles connected. And then we have $2 billion that has been added to our tribal program on top of the $1 billion we currently have. And so that'll operate as it currently is. And that'll be split between probably the current program and a new notice of funding. As I said, all of these issues are being drafted now. We have 3 programs coming up, 2 due in May, the middle mile and the BEAD program, the infrastructure. Our notice of funding will come out mid-May, and the digital equity will come out in early June. And then we will start to work with the states and providers on technical assistance, et cetera, at that point. That's a quick recap on the programs.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. First, let me thank everyone in this room for your attention to this subject, but all that you do to connect America. And the pandemic has proven once and for all that rural America needs exactly what urban America has in terms of connectivity. And that's what we're focused on at the Rural Utility Service. My name is Christopher McLean. I serve as the acting administrator. I've had that role since the change of administrations, but my day job is to be the assistant administrator for the electric program. This is a very exciting time for us at RUS right now. We are right now counting down the days to 2/22/22, which is the closing date of our current round funding for the Reconnect program, which is a loan grant, and grant offering. And it is focused on communities of 20,000 or less. We've got over $1 billion available right now. And there's been a tremendous response, both to our workshops promoting this round of funding. This is our third round of funding in the Reconnect program. And we can see in our application portal so much activity that there's a real possibility that this round alone could exceed the number of applications we had in our first two rounds. And in the first two rounds of funding, we funded over 180 projects at about $1.5 billion. Those projects are now rolling out to construction. They had to go through their environmental review after the award process. And we're working on that right now. When you look at our Reconnect program in round 3, some of you may know about some of the conditions of round 1 and round 2. We really upped our game. We moved our eligibility criteria in terms of bandwidth from 10/1 to 100/20. And we moved our build to criteria from 25/3 to 100/100. Now, good news is when we had rounds 1 and rounds 2 at 25/3 as the build to speed, the actual applications and the results we got were more than 90% at 100 and 100+. So we felt like it was time to move forward. That level of bandwidth is the kind of bandwidth we're familiar with in urban and suburban America, and rural America really desperately needs that. Another thing we've done in round 3 that is kind of new, we've taken an approach to feathering our program in with the RDOF, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, whereas in the earlier rounds, if you got RDOF money, you were taken off of the playing board. Now that we've upped the game and we have a high expectation of bandwidth, would welcome RDOF award winners. If they want to top off their awards, we'll take that into account. We won't just automatically move that off of the table. So there's a chance to plus up if you're an RDOF award winner, those areas, or to fill in places that your RDOF award didn't cover. But the end result of all of these changes, and I've just highlighted the big ones, is that the playing field right now for Reconnect in round 3 is very big. If you could just imagine those areas that didn't have 10/1 versus those areas that don't have 100/20, that puts a big part of America up for grabs. And we've also tried to highlight areas that are in the greatest need. Our scoring matrix rewards those who serve the most underserved, the most difficult remote areas, but it also recognizes there are certain areas, particularly like tribal communities and persistent poverty communities, where we can waive where we don't have to have a matching requirement. So we go to 100% grant. So we're looking forward to that. We also have more engagement with tribal communities, that if you're an applicant in a tribal area, you have to get the consent of the tribe to be able to offer services and be eligible for our funding. So the number one rule of our competition, and soon to follow round 4, which is the IIJA money, is if you don't enter, you can't win, right? So we're seeing a lot of entries. And if you're an existing incumbent service provider, in our program, we do have a 45-day comment period. So as these applications are brought up for comment, they'll be posted on our website, and we do what we call SAVs, service area validations. We will look at the comments from the service providers. We'll look at the available data that's from various sources of mapping. And if necessary, we will send our field staff out to do boots on the ground inspections. So, if you're an incumbent, you want to pay attention to those deadlines and your 45-day comment period. And then finally, the last thing I just want to mention, Reconnect is our newest program, but it is part of our whole portfolio. We have our original telephone program, which is now really all a broadband program that goes back to 1949. President Truman signed those amendments into the Rural Electrification Act to have us expand from electricity into telecom. We have a broadband loan program, and the broadband loan program now is a broadband loan and grant program, and IIJA gave us money for that as well. We have a program called Community Connect, which pinpoints the most underserved, the poorest. It's probably among the easier applications to apply for, but there are 4 areas that have, no broadband. And then we have a distance learning telemedicine program. So it's a very robust portfolio of programs, as well as in electric. Smart grid is really important. 2 fun facts: the last 2 fiscal years in the electric program, we financed more miles of fiber than we did miles of power line, because the grid of the future is a connected grid. And it's, our electric system, as we sweat out what's going on in this winter in Texas, as this time a year ago, Texas, hundreds of people died because the grid shut down in Texas, right? So it's as important to move information as it is to move electrons, to be able to have a modern electric grid. And you're seeing synergy between that with rural electric cooperatives applying for RDOF as well as Reconnect. So anyway, that's a lot going on in RUS, and we're very excited, and we're in the midst of a big application window right now.
Thank you, Chris. That was very helpful and such a detailed presentation on sharing what you're working on in USDA. So turn it over to the $10 billion man at the end. Joey, if you want to share what Treasury's working on, and
sure,
you started there, obviously a different role from what you're used to. And, again, if you could share kind of an overview of the program. I know the application window ended in December, and you guys are currently kind of reviewing applications. So tell us a little more what's going on.
Excellent. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for being here. So the American Rescue Plan, which the president signed into law last March, created the Capital Projects Fund, which allocated $10 billion to states, to territories, and to tribes to address the connectivity issues that were exacerbated by the pandemic. And the idea is to increase participation, at least this is what the statute says, in work, education, and health monitoring, and to invest in infrastructure that has a long-lasting effect beyond the pandemic. So what does that mean? We have Treasury has interpreted the statute to create 3 presumptive uses for the funds. 3 uses that we are presumptively going to say are okay. Those 3 are connectivity, which is broadband. 2, it's technologies, think laptops, computers, and public Wi-Fi. And 3rd, it's multi-purpose community centers. So what we've done is we've taken that $10 billion and we've already split it up. Every state knows their allocation. It goes anywhere from about 100 million to the smallest states to a little over 500 million for California. It was allocated based upon population, but also size of the population that's in a rural area or in an impoverished area. And so we have now sent out grant agreements to all the states. We've actually received almost all of them back signed. And so what does that mean? What phase are we in right now? Well, it's really triggered 2 things for us. The first is that states can immediately draw down up to 5% of the funds for admin, for planning, for preparation, for using their entire allotment. And so payments are hopefully going to start going out next week to states. Secondly, we are in fact receiving and reviewing, as Andrew just said, grant and program plans. States are coming to us. We've already received a number of them. I'm not going to tell you how many, but we have received a number of them, and a number more are very eager and ready to submit to us as well. We're going through those plans right now, and we're going to be going through an iterative process with them about, does this fit or does this not fit our guidance? And our hope is to, in the near future, start to approve these plans so that shovels can get in the ground. The final thing I'll say is it's essentially as though we're running 2 different programs. One is 9.9 billion for states, territories. The other 100 million is for tribes. They have a slightly separate program, and they have already, about 30 tribes have already submitted their applications. We have approved 10 of them. And in fact, payments are already going out today. I approved the first set of payments today. So we're rolling, things are happening. and excited and happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's really helpful. And Doug, I want to start with you with NTIA's programs, and you've had quite an experience over the year and a half, 2 years now, getting federal funding. You had the Broadband Infrastructure Program, BIP, that you guys had from the Consolidated Appropriations Act. I'm curious to know from those programs, the Tribal Connectivity Program, as well as the Connecting Minority Communities Program, from running those programs, experiences that you can take as you're getting these new programs to implement as part of the infrastructure bill.
Yeah, I mean, funding is a little different, right? The BEAD program is a formula-based. Money will go to the states based on basically number of unserved locations based on the FCC maps. The experience we've gained, right, is the engagement piece, right? For the new BEAD money, the key is going to be community engagement, right? The state engagement with political subdivisions, community organizations, et cetera. What we've learned that's critical for the tribes, right? So states based on unserved locations, political subdivisions, right? We talk about rural America, but there are many areas in urban America that are not connected, either physically or are not adopting. So what we've learned really is the engagement piece is key to get the state engaged with the political subdivisions, with the tribes, to educate them. We have been doing listening sessions. We've done the RFCs, which came in last week. They're not an apples to apples program comparison, but what we've learned is really the engagement is key to getting all levels of communities engaged. And as we look at the digital equity, as we look at the BEAD, as we look at the middle mile, some of those are competitive, some of them are grant-based. You really do need to get down to the grassroots to make this effective. So, and more so even in the urban areas than the rural areas, but it's important across the board.
No, that's great. And yeah, we at Encompass, we've kind of encouraged that, and part of our comments that we submitted last Friday to NTIA on the B program, encouraging NTIA to make those relationships at the state and local level and how important they are for our providers too, to build those relationships as soon as possible. So absolutely. I think hearing that from you and ways we can work together to give our providers resources, NTIA is making the contacts with state broadband offices. I think that'll be a critical piece for getting our providers that access to the funding as well. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I would just add, through our State Broadband Leaders Network, we are meeting twice a month, basically, with all the state broadband offices and territories. So there is good relationships there, and we push the engagement with providers all the time. It's critical.
Thanks for your work. Chris, if you can speak, and you mentioned the application window closing on the third round here, February 22nd. Advice to any provider or audiences listening to who are interested in applying, what they can do to get their applications in, and things that you're looking for. But you talked about the scoring criteria. Setting 100 by 100 as kind of the requirement. Why you feel that's such a good bar to set for those who are interested in applying for the funds.
Well, thank you. In terms of advice, we have this week one of our workshops ongoing, the online workshop, and you can go to usda.gov, click on go to the Reconnect for the search, and you can find out all kinds of information about the program and the application process. It's an online portal, GIS-based application where you can see service territories. So I would say, you got questions, ask. We have a help desk for the application portal. We have, again, workshops to be able to talk to people. We have field reps who dispatched to be able to answer my questions. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. All right. So anyway, don't be afraid if you're in the system now and you're working on an application. Don't be afraid to ask us questions. The other thing to bear in mind is we've got eligibility criteria, but we also have feasibility criteria. So eligibility is our front door, and then financial feasibility. And it's kind of heartbreaking sometimes because even with a 100% grant, there's just some projects that are not financially feasible or sustainable. So make your case as to how the whole project is financially feasible, whether you're doing a loan or a loan grant combo or a grant only. And then after we go through this competition, stack all and rank and stack our award winners, then you have to go through an environmental review. And so that takes patience, that takes coordination. And that's one of the big lessons we learned in the first 2 rounds of funding is sometimes how complicated the environmental review can be, and never more complicated when it hits right smack in the middle of a pandemic. And so we're staffing up at RUS to be able to handle both environmental reviews as well as processing of what we look to be very robust application window here.
Great, thank you. And just in terms of timing for the next round, since we know there's another $2 billion coming for Reconnect, I know what's your sense of when that would start after this?
So we're working on the notice now. Okay. And so it will not be too far afterwards. We want to be careful that we don't make people do double work, right? If they're maybe going to get a round 3 award, you don't want them to have to debate whether they're going to apply for a round 4. So that's one of the things we're trying to wrestle with. But the announcements will be coming not too far from now.
Thank you. Joey, turning to you. As you know, we've worked previously with your office when you were Senator Markey, and we stand for competition, more affordable prices, deployment of fiber. And we were very pleased to see with Treasury's guidance, the encouragement of more fiber as an infrastructure to invest in. If you can speak to what you think with that criteria and how important it is as we're building out networks of the future, and as our members are looking for that funding too at the state and local level, how important it is to start investing in future-proof technology.
Sure, we agree. I mean, Treasury has put its thumb on the scale, and we are explicitly saying we are encouraging fiber. Not only that, we are requiring build-outs to 100 symmetrical where practicable. That's in our guidance. That is our rule. And so as we're iterating, going back and forth with states, with territories, and with tribes, we're working with them to make sure that that's what they're trying to achieve. And I do want to comment on what Doug said a minute ago. Engagement with the state level is so critical and key. We try to do a touch almost weekly with every state because all these programs, his program and our program share a very common elements. A lot of responsibility has now been delegated to the state level, right? That's what Congress has decided this round. And so it requires a heavy dose of guiding and sharing and collaboration to make sure that we're pulling states in the right direction. We're having a big webinar on Thursday where we've got every state coming to it. So it's very important that we're sort of reaching down into states to ensure that they come up with the right plans. And finally, I'll say, because it's probably on everybody's mind, it's important that not only are we talking, but also as we're discussing with states, they're saying to us, okay, all right, so we have your allotment from Treasury. Now we're going to get this money from NTIA. There's ag money out there. There's RDOF money out there. And so we're trying to help all of these applicants, all these states through this. And I think that's where all of you come in as well, is helping states think about this, because we shouldn't be doing this in silos, right? In the end of the day, we should be able to say all of these programs and all these investments have led to us helping to close the digital divide. So that's where a lot of the conversation is happening right now with states. And in particular, I'll close with, the money is not coming at the same time, right? So there are sequencing issues, which is coming up a lot with states. Our money's available now. The NTIA money is not available now. They're waiting on the maps. So, there are questions of sequencing, and the guidance or the guidelines are a little different. And I think that's where so much of the challenge is happening at the state level right now.
Great. I was going to add to your point on how important it is to coordinate from federal to state. I was curious if you could share on coordination efforts happening between agencies. You guys kind of joked about it earlier, how important that's going to be moving forward, and kind of what are the efforts being made right now as we're seeing all these programs getting rolled out. Kind of who's leading that charge, what agencies that you're working with. You can share a little bit about that.
Sure. We're working together. We're working constantly together. I spoke to, I'll just name drop a minute. I've talked to Phil Murphy twice today. He's at NTIA. I've talked to Ramesh once today. He works in Jessica Rosenworcel's front office. Like, there is constant coordination going on because it's not just where we're going to fund, but there's a whole host of other problems. For instance, we're going to go first with our reporting guidance. Right? So we're going to give out these awards soon. And we're going to have to tell states, okay, you have to report to us. How many subs have you connected? What are the speeds, et cetera? We got to make sure that whatever we as Treasury are asking recipients for is similar to what they're all going to ask for, because all this data has got to roll up into one common set, because in the end of the day, the Biden administration is going to want to know, how have we solved the digital divide or closed the digital divide? And what is the sum result of all these investments? So there are countless areas for coordination. At least from our perspective, we've been working really well with our sister agencies.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, we meet with the FCC, USDA, at least every week on the staff level.
Absolutely.
You know, we're working on the data collection questions so that they're consistent, right? That we are getting the data that we need. This is also at the White House level, right?
That's right.
Coordination. This is a whole of government approach. It's very well orchestrated. You know, one of the things we're going to require is, how are the states when they create their plans for their money, how are they putting together all these pieces, right? How are they using USDA, RDOF, Treasury money, their own state money, right? All of that needs to be put together in a puzzle, because the goal is to connect 100% of Americans, right? And the only way we're going to get there is to orchestrate all the funding and make sure the states are looking at that. And we've been communicating this to states and the political subdivisions already, right? What we're expecting, what they need to start doing, right? Permitting offices. We coordinate because all this money plus all the other infrastructure money is going to stress states' offices, right? It's a little off base from coordination here, but at the end of the day, we are closely aligned. They've stolen people from me. You know, it's a long story. We're not going to go there now, but
Our game.
yeah, and we did, right? We held people over. We helped talk to them about the broadband program. It's the way it should be done, right? Each department has their expertise, and we can share it, and that coordination makes them all better programs and a whole of program approach.
All right, we're running a little low on time, 5 more minutes. So if you could give one piece of advice, just one, to our audience, our providers who are working to build out their networks across the country, meeting unserved and underserved communities. One thing that would help you in your role that you could ask for them and encourage any help, guys, moving forward.
The providers engage early with your states. I know states don't always reach out to you directly, but you guys should really start thinking about this, right? You know where in your areas that are unserved, right? Or underserved. So it's never too early to start engaging with the states on maybe how to approach those. Sure, we don't have the rules out there for NTIA yet, but at the end of the day, we've got to connect those areas. You guys have been doing this. The reason the country is as well built out as it is because of the private sector. You guys are going to be instrumental in closing this gap. So I would recommend that you to be proactive in reaching out to the states and talking to them about those areas that need to be connected, or areas that you're aware that are not adopting, right? I mean, it's both. Under our plan, there will be a low-cost plan obligation. But I think proactive towards the states is key.
Yeah, I would say we welcome feedback. I keep accidentally turning off my mic. But please, if you're in the application process now, give us feedback. Let us know as we move from round 3 to round 4. There are slight differences between the IIJA statutory requirements and what we had in the Rescue Act and our individual appropriations. Not huge difference, but slight differences. So let us know what you're thinking. And, you know, for rural America, again, the pandemic proved once and for all, rural America needs a high degree of bandwidth for everything that we're doing. And we appreciate all of the work of everyone in this room and in the vast listening audience to be able to do your part to connect America.
Joey?
I mean, I would agree with what both gentlemen said before me. I mean, we're at the phase where we are actively reviewing state plans. So if you have not spoken, for providers in this room, if you have not spoken with your states, you should do so yesterday, right? You're already behind. We want to make sure that ultimately we need this money to go out as soon as possible because the connectivity issues out there are so great. But also what we want to make sure is we're doing this in the right way. So the sooner we receive plans and the sooner we receive project and grant plans from states, the sooner we can have an iterative process with states. It's going to require some back and forth, but we've already looked at a few states that have, I almost slipped and told you how many states we've seen, but we've already looked at these initial plans and we need some more information, or we have some questions for states. Well, that requires some time, that requires some back and forth. So, the sooner you're speaking to your states, the sooner you're able to come to us, the sooner we're able to actually approve plans and work can begin, which is ultimately, that's the goal of what we're all trying to get to.
Thank you all. I really commend you guys for your leadership roles and what you're taking on. It's a big task ahead, and we look forward to working with you as an association to use us as a resource wherever possible. And we have a lot of large to small providers, and everyone has an opinion, and hopefully we can share those with you and make these programs the best they can be. So thank you again for being part of today's panel. So thanks.
Thank you for having us.